It's fine.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Worked out by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Cole.
Hey, welcome aboard Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you, of course, from the studios from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios mobile unit, as we're on the campus of Indiana University, of course, coming from the football complex. Right behind me, you can see George Taliaferro, the great statue of one of the greatest men to play for the program. Practices are waiting to get started. You can probably hear the music pumping out onto the practice field. Rain had been falling all night, all morning, but it stopped now, so I think that they will be practicing outside. We'll be going over there when that begins. That doesn't start for a little bit, but we'll head over there at that time to check that out. But on the program today, Alex Lasley is going to join us as the Hoosier basketball team gets ready to head to the Bahamas. I think they may have already left as they're heading down there. So we'll be talking about that. They've got two games down there coming up, I think the 13th and the 15th. Are those games scheduled at 7:30 and 1:30, I believe, are the times for those. No television, no radio. But the Hoosier.com, Indiana Rivals will be there with complete coverage, and you can make sure you get that with Alec Lasley, who will be joining us later. Also, there's a hell of a promotion going on there at the Hoosier.com. JFQ, one of their lender partners on there, they have a promotion that if you are looking to refinance, just run a potential deal through them. They will buy you an entire year subscription to Indiana Rivals. So beat that deal. That's a pretty good one. We'll have to be getting that out there. But Tom Allen and the Indiana football program about to hit the field out there a little bit as the weather has been falling over the past several hours, like I said. But a great weekend. A lot of headlines, John. What are the headlines on this Monday?
Yeah, so outside of Indiana basketball, heading to the Bahamas, we have plenty of things that happened over this weekend. The Olympics wrapped up in Tokyo. The U.S. won more gold medals and more medals overall than any other country. 39 gold, 41 silver, and 33 bronze medals for a grand total of 113 medals in 28 different sports. So that's the Olympics. Outside of that, Florida State coaching legend Bobby Bowden passed away yesterday at age 91. When he was coaching there, he had 2 NCAA titles and 12 ACC titles while with the Seminoles. Moving on to golf, Abraham Ancer wins the WGC FedEx St. Jude Invitational after outlasting Sam Burns and Hideki Matsuyama in the playoff round. Now to the MLB. The Reds swept the Pirates over the weekend, bringing them closer to the Milwaukee Brewers, who are currently in the lead in the NL Central. I believe the Reds are now only 5 games back from first place in the division. And then lastly, in the NFL, the Indianapolis Colts' Darius Leonard agreed to a 5-year, $98.5 million extension that makes him the top-paid inside linebacker in NFL history.
Well, that's a commitment to excellence there, as the Colts making a big commitment to defense. Good to see, as they are wanting a complete team. Speaking of the Colts, didn't Peyton Manning go into the Hall of Fame yesterday, I believe?
I believe he did, and I think Tom Brady was there to see it happen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we'll pull that clip. We'll have you pull a little bit of that clip up as well, as the great Colt Peyton Manning goes into the Hall of Fame. Did Edgerrin James go into the same time because of the COVID thing?
You know, I honestly didn't pay too much attention to the Hall of Fame induction, but I wish I could give you an answer there. But I'm gonna go pull up that clip for you.
I'm in the process of a move, so I didn't get a chance to watch that either. But how about the Indy race down in Nashville? Going across the bridge, there was a car that got airborne. Yeah, all kinds of craziness going on over the weekend. The IHSA has a new transfer policy that's drawing a lot of ire. Bobby Bowden, man, a 2-time national champion, Florida State coach, one of the great characters in all of college football. Very fortunate to have had opportunities to interview him. He was what you saw. He was exactly what you saw on the interviews. I mean, he was just a good old boy. Wow, I just saw a punt go up that was as high as I can imagine. But yeah, he was just a good old town folksy. I remember the great comedian Eric, what was his name? Wilson, that used to be on Bob and Tom's show. But he would always do his impersonation of Bobby Bowden, because he had some boys get in trouble. He was like, Bobby, didn't you have some guys go down there and go, well, they did, but they're good boys. They're good boys. But he was just a good old folksy kind of a guy. But not only did he have two national championships, but he probably could have had a few more had it not been for wide right, and wide left. I think it was like 3 games. If Kevin Brockway was with us today, he could sure tell us, because he's a Miami guy. But all those battles they lost with down there on the wide right and wide left. I saw that St. Jude golf, a little bit of that come to an end. Answer outlast those guys. 3 of them went to a playoff. I thought the British Open champ was going to win again. There's a new IHSA transfer rule. I haven't dug into it enough to really go into it. So, and I can't see the comments. So if you guys were talking about that, great. But football, they're right back at it today, man. They are back after it. The basketball team on their way to the Bahamas to get their season started as well. We're going to have complete coverage from there. We'll have reports from the Bahamas from a couple of different people. So we're going to have complete coverage for you on that as well. So make sure you keep it tuned here to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. It's a Monday, and not only has it stopped raining, but the sun is trying its best to come out as I look up there right now. And Alec Lasley will be joining us later on to talk some basketball. Jim Reamer is going to join us. We're going to talk some basketball as well. I feel a little bit of rain. The good thing is I've got that portal right behind me. I can just take off running if I have to. I'll hide behind George Taliaferro. But football team off to a good start. First day they've only had a couple of practices right now, so you're not going to see a lot. And in talking to Delon McCullough Friday, he talked about the practice structure, that they're using more of an NFL-type structure that he has brought with him. That, for lack of a better way of explaining it, starts out a little slower, not as much hitting at the start because of the trauma the body takes. And they have a lot of studies that he brought with him from the NFL, talking about that soft tissue trauma over the first 3 or 4 days. And as like I said, I remember back in the day, you just go right at it. First day of practice, you put the pads on, and they'll give you a day or so to just go helmet to get used to that on your neck. But after that, it's full bore, and you're right after it, and it makes complete sense to use a different type of method. But we'll see how that fares for the Hoosiers this year. But fall camp has definitely started for them, and they're a team that is looking to challenge for the Big Ten East title. I know several people have not grasped that potential right yet, but it's as real as it can be. There is no other team. Penn State, I think that Penn State, Indiana, and Ohio State are the top 3 teams in the Big Ten, not the Big Ten East. I think those are the top 3 teams in the Big Ten. Now, that's going to have to bear itself out, and we'll see. But Penn State's got a lot coming back. They're pretty solid. Indiana, a lot coming back. They're pretty solid. Ohio State always has a lot coming back. Pretty solid. So how that's not the case, I don't know. I really wish they would do away with divisions. It is pointless right now for the Big Ten to even have divisions. It doesn't matter as far as who wins that division, where your losses have come from. So winning and losing outside of your division has no bearing on whether or not, on if you win your division or not. The divisions are obviously very, very heavy on the West. Not only have you always had Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan over there, now you've got an Indiana team that has taken the place of Michigan State and Michigan. So not only do you have 4 top programs over there, you've got programs that can replace the others. That is not happening in the West at all. Purdue, Nebraska, those teams have not done anything to come up. Minnesota made a move, but they seem like they stagnated a little bit last year. They're going to be a team that's going to be curious to watch. They're on Indiana's schedule. Will they rise back? Will they come back up a little bit more? That could be a challenging game. Indiana's got a little bit more of a challenging schedule than people give it credit for. The road games are going to be hell. You go to Iowa, you go to Michigan, you go to Penn State. Are you kidding me? Now you got to play a Minnesota team that's probably better than people are going to give it credit for. And PJ Fleck he's got to do something this year. Not that his job's in danger, but you can't have that little flash and then nothing if you're going to roll that boat, man. So we'll see what PJ and the guys come up with, but looking forward to that. Sprinkle a little bit out here right now, but I don't think that's going to be much. The sun is still trying to peek out here as practice is getting ready to start. The Indiana football practice, they're over on the field there. I'm at the here at the complex. George Taliaferro right here in the back. You can put him in my hand. I can hold him up. I'm holding George Taliaferro up. Yeah, a great day. The rain come in a little bit, but you know what? In football practice, you always kind of you never complained about a little rain, as I feel some running down the back of my neck now. But rain is never something that you ever, except for slipping. And I promise you, if it's going to be wet out there, I doubt. I was wondering if they were going to go inside the pavilion or not. So that's yet to be seen on what it does. But I see the guys are up in the camera towers. So right now it looks like they're planning on having outdoor practice. You can do so much more outside, and it just feels more natural when you're outside. So they're going to try at all costs to do that. Hey, we've got to take a break. We've got lots more coming up here. Alec, Lasley, Jim Reamer are going to join us later. We got basketball to talk about. Stay tuned. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with more live from the Indiana Football Complex right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking for a
Yeah, I couldn't find anything good with the Peyton Manning clip. They were all, nothing was short and nothing had what we were looking for, really.
All right, what's next?
Let's see. Have you talked about the Reds yet?
No, I don't. But
Well, you don't have to. I was just going through that.
Peyton Manning. You got to get that Peyton Manning clip.
Well, I was
man.
trying to tell you a second ago, the Peyton Manning clip it's too long for one, and two, I can't find a short version of it.
Just stop it.
Well,
Just play it and stop.
do you want the speech or do you want the like him being introduced? Because I couldn't find the introduction. I could just find his speech.
Anything about his speech? Just him talking.
Well, all right. Well, I'll try to get that. Give me about 3 or 4 minutes to get that to where it needs to be, and then I'll come back into the screen whenever I have it ready, and then you can call for it and we'll play it. You have to give me a few minutes though.
Get wet, man. You know what? It looks dark over there, though.
Does it look like it's going to storm?
I am going to take
Back in 1 minute.
I think I'm taking I wish I had a taller.
Hey, it's not even letting me download the video because it's so big. And we're doing this right now. I'll keep working at it though. If I find something, I will still let you know. But we're coming back from break.
Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in
Did you even see
Bloomington,
me?
and then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse.
Yes.
Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Monday. Hope your week getting off to a great start. Coming to you live from the Indiana Football Complex Mobile Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios today as football practice continues for the Hoosiers as they have opened up practice. The basketball program, of course, heading off to the Bahamas to get their season underway as well. I moved in under the portico here. Next, besides George Terley O'Farrell, I'll put him back there. There you go. There's George. But it's starting to rain a little more, so I didn't want to. And looking back over to the west, it's looking kind of wet over there. So could be a wet football practice today. We'll see, as the sun was trying to come out, but we'll see how that goes. They're outside right now, and if that comes, I'm sure they'll head inside to the Mellencamp Pavilion right there. But football practice going on all over the country as college programs have started. High school programs have started as well. Baseball heading down toward not the end. We're not quite there. We're in August, but getting closer. And John mentioned the Reds, man, sweeping the Pirates. How about the Reds? I got to bet that they win the division. I'll let someone talk me into that, so we'll see how that goes. But as exciting of a run as they've had in quite some time, man, I've never had any. Can't remember the last time it was fun to talk about the Reds, but hopefully they can keep that going. What did you guys do over the weekend? What are some of the comments that are being out there, John? Like I said, I can't see them out here when we're live, so you'll have to fire those on and read them. Actually, I can't. Forgot to bring my glasses with me. They're over in the car, so got to go get that. I can see that that's a new one.
Here's one right now, and then I get back to what I was doing. I'm getting that Manning clip almost pulled up. But Brian Carroll says the radar in Bloomington is getting hit with a storm about 10:30 a.m. You were talking about the rain coming in.
Yeah, well, that's about right. I guess that so we've got about an hour before that thing hits, but I'm glad I took precautionary measures and moved under before it hit instead, because I could see. I was like, man, as I looked over, I was looking to the east, and I'm like, oh, wow, there's the sun. It looks great. And then as I happened to look back the other way, I'm like, uh-oh, that looks completely opposite, as it looks like it's going to be a dark practice for the Hoosiers today, or a wet one later on. But that should be about the time that they wrap things up today. So, but whether or not they've got places to go inside. Back in the day, they didn't have that. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. They didn't have an indoor facility. They were one of the programs that are just the furthest behind in football. So to see them where they are today, it's amazing. To see them having a shot at competing for a Big Ten East championship against programs like Penn State and Ohio State, utterly amazing. Because it wasn't that long ago, they didn't even have an indoor facility. They were one of the last to get that. But they have made the commitment to football and the rest of the sports. And you're going to see a hell of a sports season for the Indiana Hoosiers this season. Like I said, I've talked about their top 6 sports. They should all be ranked. The 2 soccer programs in this fall, of course, the men's program, one of the perennial programs in all of college soccer, but the women's program being ranked last year under the new coach. So they're doing well. Of course, women's basketball having a hell of a season, finishing in the top 8. Men's basketball heading off to the Bahamas. And, of course, football, we expect them to be ranked. They should be ranked in the top 15. Everyone keeps asking me. And where they'll be ranked, I don't know, because the national look is always different from inside. Those people are not around the program as much. Indiana is definitely a top 15 program to start the season, without question in my mind. Whether they'll be there or not, I don't know that. But I do know if they can go to Iowa, win that game, and come back, they will have beaten Idaho. Their third game will be against Cincinnati, who should probably be a top 10 team. I expect that to be a top 10 matchup between those two. So,
hey, I've got that Manning clip if you want to use that now.
Peyton Manning going into the Hall of Fame from the Colts over the weekend. Great to see that, and let's hear what he had to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Peyton Manning for enshrinement into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Archie Manning.
Well, John, that's not a lot of sound, so let's skip that part. That's just Peyton Manning, his bust being introduced and all of that. So I was hoping we'd have a
You're
speech.
fine. I was just trying to trim it down to where it could be uploaded into StreamYard, because if it was too big, it wasn't going to be able to come in there. I didn't know what it was going to show. I just took the beginning, and I didn't know what it was going to do.
No worries. But Peyton Manning going to we'll get that later. Peyton Manning going to the Hall of Fame. You should be able to hear Coach Allen behind me talking as football practice has begun. They're going. Still hasn't stopped raining, so I'm a little surprised. I may move back out there into the sunlight, so have a little better sun, but we'll see how that is working. But the weather hopefully cooperating on this day as moving back out. It has stopped raining, so there's that. But how was your weekend? What did you guys do? I know a lot of people headed to the lake over the weekend. That time is starting to come to an end as we're getting closer and closer to Labor Day weekend. Get George back in that picture there as well. For those of you who are not watching on YouTube Live, radio on the line, what's he talking about? But we're coming to you live from the Indiana Football Complex as practice has begun. Actually started last week. Thursday was our first day out here for Media Day, and then Friday they had practice, and Saturday as well. As I think there were some highlights that you could see up there. Practice is not open to the public. And it's fenced off, so not saying that you couldn't see something if you came, but that's not what they would like for people to do, FYI. So if you're thinking about that. But coming to you here in Bloomington, what is on your mind? What are your questions? What are you thinking for the upcoming seasons? What are your thoughts? What do you think this team will actually do? I know the national mantra is still the wait and see. I'm wondering what the fans are thinking. Do they think that this team is legit? Do they think that they have a legit shot at the Big Ten East title? What are you guys thinking? What are the comments? John, you're going to put those up, like I said, because I can't see those while we're out here live. But we're curious to see what the true feeling is. Not the hope, not the fan hope. What do you really think is going to happen? And I know it's hard for a lot of fans because they can't put that fan thing aside. And the truth is, I can throw a number out there like I have at 9-3. I think that Indiana should go 9-3. That's what they should do. Now, if they go 8-4, does that mean it's a lost season? Hell no. Not with the schedule they play. If they win 7 games, is that a horrible season? Hell no. Because of the schedule they play, because of how these games can go, because you've got to go on the road to Iowa. You have to go on the road to a 110,000 seat Big House at Michigan, they may not be as good as you, but it doesn't matter. That's still an environment that is unbelievably difficult to play in. Loudest place I've ever been in my life.
I got a question for you, Jim. If Indiana starts off 1-2 with losses to Iowa and then to Cincinnati, what do you think the fan perception becomes after that? Even though it's early in the season, because I know you said
same old Indiana
be measured by 9-3, 8-4.
It'd be same old Indiana. The thought would be. But what sucks is you have not either of those. If they were to lose those games, neither of those are a bad loss. No. Cincinnati is going to be a top 10 team. To go up, Indiana's not going to be favored at Iowa. I can tell you right now, Las Vegas will not have Indiana as a favorite in Iowa to start the season. I don't think. I would be shocked. So it's going to be an upset when Indiana wins that game per Vegas. So you can't throw a lot of shade on that. Cincinnati has proven they're a top 10 team. They already were. So, but you got to win those games.
Allen Hughes says he's looking for a 10-2 season, and then Robert Carter looks like he's throwing in a bowl win in there with an 11-2 season.
All possible. I've said it many times. There's not a team on this schedule that Indiana cannot beat, and that includes Ohio State. Can they beat them? Hell yes. We don't know what Ohio State's going to be like. We knew last year what they had at quarterback. We don't know this year. No one really knows yet. Now, it's not like I'm expecting any fall off of great proportion for Ohio State. They're 3 deep at everything. We know that. But it doesn't matter. There's only 11 guys on the field at the same time. We saw what happened last year, and they have to come to Bloomington this time. So it's going to be interesting. Indiana, the Iowa game is so important because it's the start that if you can go on the road and beat an Iowa, a top level conference opponent to start your season, ranked, a top level conference ranked opponent, the amount of confidence that is going to shoot through the veins is immeasurable. I can't read that one, but
Ross Bunnell, RBO Sprint, says if we win 9, including a bowl victory, he'll be good with it. So he's saying 8-4, kind of like you were saying, plus a bowl victory.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. That's crazy. If fans start complaining about that, that's crazy. It depends. As long as they're not losing to the wrong people. But I don't see that because being around this program enough, I see how serious every single player takes every bit of this. There is no BS to any of that stuff that you see. All that, what some people would call rah-rah stuff, it's not rah-rah. It's true. It's sincere. It's real. They all believe it. They all take it to heart. They all live it. And that's the key. Remember, think back in the day, and I'm not talking about Indiana specifically, but think back in the day to college football teams. What were the one constant with college football teams? All the players were always getting in trouble, always doing crap, always out causing problems. You know, Florida was having problems. Florida, all these different schools, everybody's had it. Indiana's had their share as well. Anybody has always had problems. You noticed that really has gone away for the most part. I'm not saying 100%, but you can't eradicate 100%. But wow, you think back, I'm amazed how the transformation of kids you talk about, they use the word, and it is so culture. God, I'm almost sick and tired of using that word now, because what Tom Allen has created, it's not a culture, it's a way of life. It's a way of living, and they're all doing it together, and that has made that team incredibly. The solidarity, and a program like Indiana has to have solidarity. It has to have everything it can get, because it doesn't have a 110,000 seat stadium. It doesn't have the history of the Ohio State Buckeyes. So they have to grab any and everything they can to use that to bolster themselves up. So, but they are definitely there, and that's got to sustain itself. But I think this recruiting that you're seeing, that is sustaining that. That shows that's sustaining. Now you got to win on the field. They haven't. Someone like Tywan Mullen or even Tom Allen, they'll be honest with you and say, you know what? Truth is, we haven't won anything yet, and they haven't won a bowl game, haven't won a Big East, haven't won anything. That's
back to what you were saying about the them being an underdog against Iowa. Shimitori 66 says Vegas currently has Iowa as a 4.5-point favorite.
Boom, there you go. It'll be interesting as we get closer to that game. What happens with that? 4.5 points. Okay. To me, that's a lot of respect for Indiana. When it gets down to a field goal, that'll be even more respect. And that's going to be a hell of a game. I mean, I just keep thinking about that and how exciting it's going to be. Looking forward to being out there, waving to the kids at the Children's Hospital. But that game, you talk about starting off college football, it's not just a conference game. It's going to be between two programs that are kind of mirroring each other. Iowa's exactly what Indiana wants to be. a consistent winner in the Big Ten. And that is exactly what Iowa has been, one of the most consistent football programs in America under Kirk Ferentz. And he's the most tenured coach maybe in all of college football. But Iowa has been a solid program to go there. It was like when they went to Nebraska and beat Nebraska. Doesn't matter that Nebraska is not great at this moment. That's a program. Now, Iowa is still good. So you go to Iowa and win there. Now, that says a lot to where the program is and where it's going and where it can go. But it's just, it kicks your season off. The difference between winning and losing, there's no losing, there's no way it does not take you down. The good thing is, if they were to lose that game, they have a get-right game right after that. But you don't want to rely on those. You don't want to rely on that for the perception, the national perception. Climbing those rankings, it's very hard. When you knock yourself down, man, they really lay it on you sometimes. Now, losing at an Iowa is would not be tough, but you win at Iowa, and that's all the better for you. That would catapult Indiana into a position, like I said, that when they come back, they beat Idaho, and then if you can beat a Cincinnati, you're looking at being in the top 7 early in the season. And I don't even want to talk about getting far ahead out if they can remain undefeated until Ohio State comes here. That would be a phenomenal situation. Looking forward to it. Hope it happens. Can you imagine the excitement? Think about the excitement of an undefeated Ohio State team coming into Bloomington to play an undefeated Indiana team who would undoubtedly be ranked in the top 7 or so by then. This would be a potential top 5 matchup. I mean, if we're going to talk craziness, let's just go all out, because that is the potential. Now, does that happen? Indiana's going to win. It's on Indiana's back to do that, but I think it's very, very possible. Like I said, there is not a team on their schedule that they can't beat. Hey, we got a lot more coming up. Alec Lasley's going to join us. We're going to talk some basketball as the Hoosiers are heading off to the Bahamas to get their season started. We'll be back with that and more right here from the Indiana Football Complex, brought to you by Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from the Mobile Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Back after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for
Alex said it's not looking good on him being able to do a 10 o'clock segment.
Tell him I want to know why, because we need him.
Well, you're going to have him in 3 minutes. You can ask him if you need to.
Well, I'd rather not do that live.
Well, I know, but I can't. What else are we going to do? I can't sit there and tell him.
Yes, you tell him. You tell him I'm expecting him to be on at 10.
All right, I can send him that, I guess. And if for some reason, Jim, he can't, I can take it with Jim Reamer doing the press conference stuff. We can talk about what Mike Woodson was saying. Don't stress out about that if that's what you're worried about.
It's not so much worry.
Also, in case Alec doesn't show up on time for this, you got a comment. Someone talked about Jalen Duren committing to Memphis. He was the top guy in the 2022 class.
doesn't join us when?
No. Jalen Duren,
He
committed
doesn't join
to
us.
Memphis.
Why would Alec not join us at 9:40?
I meant if he's not on time.
Why would he not be on time?
He's doing Toe and Tracy right now. He didn't say he wouldn't be. I'm just saying if he is late for whatever reason. I'm not saying he's going to be late. I'm just preparing you for if he is.
Gotcha.
All right, got about 30 seconds. I'm going to bring us back in.
Bloomington's got you covered. They're Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. For deals like this, how about a new 2020 Honda Civic LX front-wheel drive lease for just $180 a month? Or a new 2021 Honda Accord LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you. Golf Club at Eagle Point Mobile Studios here at the Indiana Football Complex. As you should be able to hear the whistle blowing there as practice is well underway. A little bit of a drizzle here, not much. I'm watching the clouds. They're actually blowing out of the southeast. So when I looked over my left shoulder to the west earlier, it looked kind of bad, but I think that maybe they're all right because it looks like it's coming from the southeast kind of strangely. But looking forward to Alec Lasley joining us here in a little bit as the Indiana basketball team is heading to the Bahamas to play a couple of games preseason down there against some international squads. There'll be no television, no radio, so no coverage whatsoever except from the few media outlets that are going down. Indiana Rivals, thehoosier.com is one of those. We'll have complete blow-by-blow coverage for you as well, so make sure that you stay tuned there. And if you haven't signed up, they have a great promotion going on right now, JFQ Lending. If you're looking to refinance, anybody that's looking to do that, just to check into that, they will pay for an entire year for a Rivals account, a Rivals subscription for you for just checking into that. So make sure you go to that. Alec Lasley from thehoosier.com joins us now. Like I was just talking about, Indiana heading to the Bahamas to see where they stand and making sure, reminding people, a great promotion with JFQ Lending there to make sure they take full advantage of that, because that's going to give you a year of Indiana Rivals for free.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a perfect time to join. Obviously, not only a lot of stuff going on with football, but the biggest trip and the biggest week probably for Indiana in recent memory, going down to the Bahamas and actually starting to see what this team can look like with Mike Woodson. I think a lot of people are super excited to hear about not only the off and the defensive scheme system that's going to be put into place, but it's going to be a great time to just see Mike Woodson back on the sidelines for Indiana basketball, which a lot of people – yep.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to see who's doing what. There's a lot of new faces that aren't new faces. Patrick Stewart is a new face, not a new face, but we never saw him, so we don't know what. So he is a new one. We heard Mike Woodson talk a little bit about him, how he had been one of the top offensive players for a little bit. Guys have kind of moved in and out. He doesn't seem to know who the guy is yet, which is great for what this trip is all about, to go down and play against competition that you can't control and to see how your guys respond and see who responds.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he said it that there's been a lot of really good competition in practice. That's good, but a lot of these guys are sick of practicing against the same players day in and day out, and they're ready to actually get up against some other competition. It's going to be great for Woodson to now see what these players can take from practice and translate to now the next level and the next step in their progression, which is going up against much different teams, much different players, and more professional players, and not just strictly college guys who kind of know the games inside and out after going against them so much. So it's going to be, like I said, probably one of the best weeks for Indiana not only this summer, but since Mike Woodson took over, just because now you have everything kind of coming into place with him finally being able to put into place and take everything that he's been working on in practice and put it in a game setting. And you're going to see what these guys have worked on over the past few months and since the season ended. And there's a lot of guys. You named one, Parker Stewart. Tamar Bates, I think, is another guy that a lot of fans are interested to see how he's doing. And then also Rob Finney. We heard not only Rob Finney talk about it, but Mike Woodson talk about just what a different player Rob Finney looks like right now. And I know a lot of fans are probably saying, well, we've heard that for the past 3 years. But the biggest thing that Rob Finney talked about was how this coaching staff is instilling confidence in him. And that's something that was missing previously. And I think you're going to see, just with how the roster is made up now, much different than what it has been since Rob Finney's been there. A totally different role for him, but a role that he is going to embrace and feel extremely comfortable in playing. So I think those are 3 guys that I'm really excited to finally get to see.
Yeah, Rob Finney is one you mentioned. He is one of the, I guess you call him a senior. He is a senior, not a senior. I don't know but he's someone that his role is going to be precarious. Is he able to hold on to that? Or the young guys that are coming in, iron sharpens iron, like you talked about. We talked about Trace Jackson Davis, his ability being moved out and he talked about it more, about moving out and moving around. I talked to Race Thompson. I asked him in talking to Brian Walsh last week, they talked about using Race to get the offense started and bringing the ball up instead of looking for a guard right off, get the ball up the floor and using the bigs to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to see just an entirely different system than what we've been accustomed to seeing past 4 or 5 seasons with Indiana. And that starts with the multiple different skill sets that you're going to see on the floor. A lot of guys can do a lot of different things, and you're going to see a lot of guys in different positions on the floor, whether that be a Rob Finney playing anywhere on the outside of the perimeter, from taking the ball up to maybe being a spot-up shooter, to then obviously the big guys that you just talked about being able to step out, get the offense kind of going, and also take an outside shot. There's just so many different aspects of this offense that Indiana has not been accustomed to, and you're going to start to see that right from when the ball tips down in the Bahamas. And I think it's going to be great for all these players to be able to not only go up against a really good team that's produced a lot of NBA talent, but a professional team as well that is going to come in there, and they're going to know that Indiana's looking to make a statement, and they're going to give them their best shot. And it's going to be interesting to see which players are going to live up to that challenge early on. And it's going to be an extremely exciting week for Indiana, regardless of the result on the floor, just because of everything that's kind of come into this week over the past 3 or 4 months. I think that's what a lot of fans are looking for.
Yeah, and you mentioned bringing in these teams that produce NBA talent, or more of a professional style team, which to me is perfect for what Mike Woodson is trying to do, to judge what he has right now, to play them against that style of defense and that level of defense, because playing against some up-and-coming college kids probably would not give him the eyes that he needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that would help, but this is going to help them even more, even if they do end up losing by 10, 15 points in one of these games, right? Because you're going to be able to take a lot more of these lessons. And we heard Coach Woodson talk about it too, the ability to use film and the ability to see that film in a lot of ways is something that he's going to bring, which is a lot newer, I think, to this program. It's a lot more, obviously you do that still in college a lot, but the ability to do that, and that's what kind of separates the good from the great players when they get to the NBA, is the ability to be able to watch film and see exactly what they need to work on and what they need to fix in such a short period of time. And I think that's one thing that Mike Woodson is really instilling in this group. And so to be able to take not only the lessons that they're going to learn from this week and play against the top players internationally, but then be able to take any of those lessons and build on that is something that's going to be the most beneficial moving forward.
talk about recruiting, where we are right now. I know there's been not a lot going on, but where are we right now on the recruiting side? Saw some commitments elsewhere.
Yep. So a lot of it's going to be circling around Noah Clowney and then also Bryce and Saw. Those are the two biggest names outside of Jalen Hood-Schifino right now. Noah Clowney set his official visit for later this fall as well. Bryce Sensabaugh going to be visiting this fall right around the Labor Day area. So those are the two biggest names outside of Hood-Schifino. Hood-Schifino's already been on campus back in June. Noah Clowney and Bryce Sensabaugh, two different players. All of those guys have the ability to play at Indiana if they really want. Indiana's not going to be able to secure commitments from all three of those guys, but getting a commitment from one of those guys is not going to impact the other, just due to their versatility, and Noah Clowney being a big guy, Hood-Schifino being a combo guard, and then Bryce Sensabaugh kind of playing multiple different positions out on the wing. So those are the three guys that Indiana is going to be kind of zoned in on here in the next few months. Wouldn't be surprised if there's a new that pops, but I think those are three that Indiana fans are going to be pretty comfortable with getting commitment from at least one of those guys. I think two is kind of the max. I still don't think we're going to get two commitments from that group, just due to Mike Woodson also wanting to push super hard for the transfer portal. But I think you look at Noah Clowney and Hood-Schifino is maybe the two out of that you're going to get a commitment from, with Bryce and not too far down there. But those are the three guys that Indiana fans are definitely need to know if they don't already.
And this is a question that probably doesn't have an answer right now, because we've asked about, will the transfer portal be more important than base recruiting going forward? I don't know that I know that. You always want to have your base recruiting, but I think is it going to be a 50-50 proposition?
Yeah, because if you look at it, you're going to be able to get high major guys and Power 5 guys late in the spring and even in the summer, and you're not going to be able to get impactful players like that outside of maybe the top 25 to 30 guys in the recruiting class, and we saw thousands of players who entered the portal. I think it ended up being close to 2,000 in total. So there's going to be so many big time names that year in and year out will be entering the transfer portal that are looking for not only a fresh start, but also a level up. So you're going to see a lot of mid majors have the ability to play at that high major level. And so I think you're going to see, at least with Mike Woodson, you're going to see more of a push for the transfer portal and keep that recruiting class maybe a little bit smaller, to around the 2 to 3 guys. I think is going to be his magic number, and then get 1 to 2 transfers per year and just keep rolling through that. Whether it's a guy who can stay 1 year or 2-3 years, that's going to depend, and that's going to obviously create a little bit of an inability to be able to recruit if you're going to need to continue to roll over half of your roster each and every year. But he's shown the ability to go out and kind of get the guys that he wants, whether it be a transfer or whether it be a guy in high school. So I don't think any fans have anything to worry about when it comes to that recruiting aspect, if it's in the transfer portal or from high school prospects.
And as far as in-state recruiting, I think that there's going to be a little bit of a shift. I don't think that Indiana's going to not focus on in-state recruiting, but I think it's going to be for the elite and the elite only. If they're not elite, I don't think they're going to get a look from Indiana anymore. I think that Mike Woodson has made the decision that he wants the best and only the best players, period, and he doesn't care if they come from Indiana or Timbuktu.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Look at obviously just the recruiting aspect from Archie Miller and then Mike Woodson. One very in-state dominant, and one who is now very out-of-state dominant in terms of kind of who they brought in, with multiple of the newcomers being out-of-state, whether it be the transfer portal or a Tamar Bates or anything like that, who are going to be now playing for Indiana that didn't even sniff the state of Indiana. So I think Mike Woodson's doing it the right way. Obviously, we're going to be able to see that and see the product that's put on the floor to really see if it is the right way. But from an outsider's perspective, a guy who multiple fans have to look at what he's doing and say, maybe it is time to change things up and not just solely focus on the state of Indiana, because as long as you bring in maybe one kid from each and every class in Indiana, at the most two, I think you're going to be fine. But it's time to kind of expand the borders and look elsewhere and be able to bring in the top talent. If that is in Indiana, that's great. If it's not, and you go a class without getting an Indiana kid, I don't think that's going to hurt you, because as long as you're putting a winning product on the floor, that's the biggest thing for a lot of these kids. I think it's more having the kids want to come to Indiana than having the coach want the kid to want to come to Indiana. And that's the biggest flop that you're going to see from the previous two staffs here is Mike Woodson to go after the top kid. They want to come to Indiana, but if he doesn't think you're good enough, he's not going to put on full court press that maybe we would have seen previously.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's about, just building a winner. He doesn't care about anything else other than putting a winning program on the floor, which at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's not about anything else. So what's next? We've got the Bahamas trip. So game coverage, the games are on the 13th and the 15th. There's no television. There's no radio. The Hoosier.com will have complete game-by-game or blow-by-blow coverage inside of the games, coverage leading up to the games. What all do you have planned? What all will the fans have to look forward to for coverage from the Bahamas?
Yeah, absolutely. So we only get to have a certain amount of game time footage, but that'll be up from both games. So you'll be able to release some actual video coverage from both of those games. Won't be kind of everything, but it'll be a nice little tease to be able to see kind of what these players look like, what the systems look like. Bunch of preview articles up, starting from these press conferences to a look at obviously the competition that they're going to be playing over there, and then we'll have a lot of notes and tidbits from whether it be some practices we'll be able to go to observations from the game to go along with the video, and then also be able to talk to the coaches and players while we're down there as well, and get some feedback from not only how they think they're doing, but just kind of the sense of where the team is at as a whole, chemistry-wise, and moving forward after the Bombers, how they think they're going to be able to mesh, and kind of their takeaways from the week that they're going to be down there.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see who shows up, who is the guy thought to be the leaders, because we've got nothing right now. We're starting from ground zero with information, and that includes the players that have been there. I mean, Trace Jackson-Davis, we don't know what he's doing because his role is changing. So we don't know yet how he's adapted to that. It's going to be exciting to find out. Even Race Thompson's role has changed. You've got Michael Durr there to cause. There are so many things, new things that we don't know and still won't know after this trip, because except for the people who actually get to see it, but we'll be able to provide that coverage. But it's still yet until we get to see them in a whole game, it's going to be a little bit of cloak and dagger stuff.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a lot of teasing out there, but I think it's exactly what you want to continue to build that lead up and excitement into the regular season. So there, again, this is the best case scenario for Indiana, regardless of the results that come from the two games that they're playing down there, the 10 extra practices that they get, the extra team chemistry that they're going to be able to put in. Obviously, I think it's even more so impactful after a COVID year where they were together, but they weren't able to really do anything as a team outside of kind of sit in their rooms or the basketball facilities and travel together. This is a time where they're actually going to be able to get out, see, have some fresh new scenery, be able to do something that a lot of these guys haven't done before. And that's an international trip to be able to not only play some basketball, but have some fun while they're out there. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is go out there, have some fun, where, maybe you haven't been able to do that over the last few years, but it's just going to be such a good trip overall, from the coaches to the players to the fans, anyone that's going to be covering the team and doing anything like that, just because there's been such a lack of commitment in the last few years. So no matter what happens, it's going to be a good trip for the Hoosiers.
Absolutely. Looking forward to seeing what happens with it and how it comes out of there. And those 10 extra practices, I cannot emphasize how important and crucial that is, especially to any team, but to a team like this that is coming together. It's unbelievable how important that extra 2 weeks is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the 10 extra practices in itself is good in any offseason, but to have that after basically turning over your entire basketball program, not only to a new coach, to a new staff, but then also to 5 new faces. And that's the biggest thing. A lot of new roles, a lot of guys still trying to kind of figure each other out. And you can do that a lot in the summer with individual workouts, with 3-on-3 workouts, and then even when you get into team practice. But having full 5-on-5 team practices is something that to have 10 more of those this offseason with all of those new things in place is something that is just super valuable for this team moving forward.
Alec Lasley is on here. I got to jump off and head to football practice and check that out. Jim Reamer is going to join next, and John's going to take you guys home as well. Thank you guys for those of you on here as I jump off. Without you, there's nothing for us to do, and I'll see you guys on the radio tomorrow as things continue, but we'll take a break here. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you live from the Indiana Football Complex, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda Bloomington and Eagle Point Golf Club. Back after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans.
I got to go, guys.
Sounds
Hello,
good.
Jim Reamer.
Was I supposed to come on earlier?
No, you're fine. No, you're perfect.
Okay, good. All right.
I'm out, but I'm out. See you.
All right. Oh, they're
go.
entrusting us. They're entrusting this to me?
Yep, basically.
Oh,
Not
dear.
always a good thing.
No. Yeah. Usually Jim drives the narrative, and Charlie and I just kind of tell stories.
Yep. Are you guys done for the summer? Your team?
Yeah. We ended in July.
Hey,
for
I'm here. I was trying to kick him out, but he left, and then I filtered over, and I kicked myself out. So we're
That's
still.
all right.
You don't have to worry about doing it yourself, because I heard you saying that whenever.
Oh, no, I figured you would chime in at some point. I just didn't know what we were doing today.
And so
I
the
saw
goal,
earlier Charlie wasn't here.
Yeah. So the goal from this right now, from what I've been told, as I try to figure out my camera real quick, I think we're getting that there. All right. He wants you and Alec to do this first segment until 10:15 or 10:20. I guess Alec talk more about the Bahamas and basketball, whatever it may be. And then after that, I have some clips from the press conference from Friday, from Mike Woodson's press conference. And he was kind of wanting us to break down some of what that is. And we can just go through some of those clips. And then whenever we run out of that, if it's either until we run out of that or until we hit 11 o'clock, whatever comes first.
That's fine.
So,
yeah, I know I have to 10:30, kind of 10:25 is that cutoff for me that I will have to run.
Yeah, if you've got you go until you're comfortable finishing up, because I know we kind of he threw that on you kind of at the last minute, and he was like, make sure Alec knows I need him for 10 o'clock. And I was like, well, I'll do what I can, but I can't make him stay, obviously.
Yeah, I have a little bit more time, so I can do that. And then I'll just have to run kind of around that, like that extra segment.
Yeah.
So.
And during this first segment, I'll pop in at about 10:15 to let you kind of know that wrap it up whenever you're ready and all that stuff.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and bring us back in.
Of course, Sam's Restaurants has multiple locations and something for everyone. Sam's Restaurant in Fishers has homemade coffee cakes and much more. Sam's Place in Broad Ripple has wings, tender steaks, and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Hey, Alec, before we get going, let me pub a sponsor here since the Psalms sponsor that they've got. I didn't realize they had a restaurant down in Bloomington. The ones that they mention, in Carmel and in Nora, which is 86th Street, both those are excellent places. So I just heard that and I thought, man, that's all of a sudden that sounds good. That may end up being where lunch is today, but I guess Jim is gone, so we're sort of running the roost here for a half hour.
Yeah, he's down at the IU football practice. We'll be taking that on a nice rainy day in Indiana and in Bloomington, so we should be having fun out there.
Good. What do you get a chance as like official media to get to practices, to get any of these practices?
Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit different for basketball. We still haven't found out exactly what that's going to be, but for football, yeah, you have kind of a certain amount of practices per week that you can go to,
Cool.
whether it be, for the whole thing or for certain aspects of it. So I think that's why, Jim's going to try to get down there for whether it's 2 days a week for some of those practices or 3 days, kind of depending on their schedule that they give us, because it kind of changes week by week in terms of what we're able to see. But, no matter what, it's a lot better and a lot different than it was last year. Being able to see anything in person. So it's always good for whether it's a one drill for practice or whether it's the whole segment to finally get down there and see all of it in person. So yeah, that's what he'll be kind of focusing on a little here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, from a non-media perspective, I missed going to practices last year. Now I'm speaking only about college basketball practices because of COVID. I was able to get into one. Probably shouldn't even say which one it was. It was not in state, so I don't know that I don't want to out anybody for breaking what is and may still be some COVID protocols. But I miss going to practices. I usually go to probably a half dozen Butler practices just because I live close, and then I tour around. It usually take a couple of trips a year to practices. I go in looking for different teaching points, different drills, different ways to do things. And if I walk out of there with one thing that I can use or do differently, then I've considered it probably a pretty good learning experience. And you get to hear the coaches talk, just candidly to their team, and you get to hear the things that matter to them. And that's a big learning experience. I think that's beneficial to me as someone who coaches. And I think it's also beneficial to you guys, to people who are like beat writers or guys that cover sports teams, to hear the things that matter the most when they're doing the most teaching and doing the most prep work. So it's good that you guys get to be at practices. I don't know if Coach Miller was that open about practices. Were you around before COVID? I mean,
at the very tail end of it.
Very tail end of, yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of different, obviously, kind of moving into postseason play for them at that point, and then going straight into COVID. So it was kind of different the way that they had things set up. But just even in terms of media availability, whether it be on Zoom or anything like that, or just even to have the options to contact any of the players or the coaches, just things are a lot more open since Mike Woodson took over. One can kind of gather that once things move into a much more in-person setting, that things are going to be a lot more open in terms of availability at practice, whether it be, for certain practices or whether, you shoot them a message and say, hey, you want to get into practice. I'm sure things are going to be a lot different when it comes to that with this new staff, just because so far over the past few months, we've had a lot of availability and options to talk to any of the coaches and then also any of the players. So it's totally different than what it was the previous staff.
It's funny. Coach Crean was pretty restrictive with media, especially toward the end. He was still inviting or welcoming
guys who came down from the coaching perspective. And obviously, if I would go into a practice, it wouldn't be something that I would talk too openly about, in discussions with you or even Jim on here. I just don't think that's the kind of exposure they're looking for. They're not looking for those types of discussions to be had, but so Crean would be welcoming to coaches, and as long as someone like me didn't write about it or tweet about it or talk about it, I don't think there would ever been any problems. Miller was really restrictive. He was, unless you were rolling in a recruit, basically, or coming in an open practice, which would be like if you were like a school coach bringing your school team, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to go through to get in. And it was frustrating because that's how coaches build relationships too, and as hands-on or however Coach Woodson's going to handle the recruiting part of it, like directly himself. One thing is clear: his staff is the guys that I've been able to communicate with. I've known Dane for a while. Really good at building relationships, and part of that, part of that is the practice process. I enjoy going down and watching, and it's something that I've always been able to do, and I'm looking forward to get back to going to. And not just Indiana, but just in general. But good for Indiana that they're across the board seeming to be a little bit more open about it, because I think it's important for guys like you to hear them when it's casual, to hear them, when they're doing a lot of teaching and not just stuff they're trying to prepare to let out and, things of that nature. So, and it's easier for Jim too, because he doesn't have to worry about really battling to get permission, to get access. And it seems like the football program has been pretty open, at least here recently. But then they've been awfully successful out under Coach Allen, so that's good. So,
yep, and I think another thing you're going to see with the new staff here is you're just going to see a lot more of that. Mike Woodson's talked about it multiple times, but just a lot more of that family atmosphere. So I think you're going to see not only the ability to have, whether it's media, but also former players come back a lot more, which is something that you didn't see a lot of previously in the past 5-10 years. I think that's just one of the biggest adjustments to that, the biggest changes that this staff is going to make. And you see around the country, a lot of these historic programs tend to have their players come back every summer, or just throughout the season for games and stuff like that. And outside of a few games where you'd have Cody Zeller, Victor Oladipo, or anything like that, it just didn't seem like there were a lot of former players who were really welcomed back with open arms from the past 10 years aspects.
Well, yeah, a lot of that too is the night factor. Especially with the older guard. I mean, there's a lot of players that would stay away just because they didn't want to mess with it, and there was a lot of inherent drama, even if they were trying to stay out of it. And part of them staying out of it was them staying away. Guys that wanted to go back, that didn't. There were guys that had no interest in going back, who obviously then didn't. It just was a big split. Obviously, the further out it got, the less buzz, less talk there was about it. But it was great that obviously Coach Knight got a chance to come back and be embraced and welcomed himself back into the IU community, because I think it made everything better from a former player perspective, especially those clearly that played for him. And that's the history of the program. I mean, that's the part you referred to is the historical part of that. And, guys like Oladipo and Zeller and those guys obviously have a lot of credibility and brought a lot of value to the program, but it's not the championship history, through no real fault of their own. It's not the championship history that program is based on, and the lore of that program is based around. So it's still great to see. It's still great to see all those guys coming back and being part of that. And Woody, I think, being part of that group. I mean, he would be one of the guys that would come back. I don't know, like physically come back, but he would be one of those guys that would be coming back and visiting the program if he wasn't already the head coach, because he was outstanding. And he's one of the few guys I remember that much older than me that I remember watching him play in high school. So I'm old enough to know when he played in high school, old enough to have watched and kind of remember it. So, but what else are we talking about? What were some things you guys were discussing before I got on?
Yeah, so I mean, we finally got the chance to kind of talk to some of the players, and then Mike Woodson before going down to the Bahamas on Friday here. So we got a lot of good insight on some of the guys kind of standing out early in the summer here. A couple of Parker Stewart, who Coach Woodson said through a stretch was the best player on the floor for Indiana. So I think that's something that a lot of Indiana fans are excited to hear, just because there has been so much talk about Parker Stewart over the past year, 6 months to a year, that no one's really been able to see him play. No one still kind of knows how he's going to fit into the program. But hearing that, I think just got fans even more excited than maybe they were, because I think he was maybe a name that was forgotten a little bit heading into this season when you have the additions of, a Tamar Bates, Xavier Johnson, Miller Koppel, a lot of these other guys who are coming in fresh and newer, kind of, built up that excitement. But he was a name that I think a lot of Indiana fans forgot about, especially in that loaded backcourt that now has a lot of depth and a lot of different versatility, from a Xavier Johnson to a Rob Finney to a Christian Lander, or anything like that. So he was one guy. It also was interesting to hear him talk about Tamar Bates as well, being one of the top 5 offensive players that have been on the floor so far. That wasn't too much of a shock. I think everyone knows how offensively talented he is. But the fact that he also was able to gain about 12 pounds of muscle since he's been on campus, I think is exciting to hear for Indiana fans as well. But one thing that we didn't touch on was Trey Galloway was also another name that Coach Woodson said was one of those top 5 offensive players. I know, being an in-state guy, a lot about the local recruits, the local prospects anywhere in the state of Indiana. But I think hearing that from Indiana fans' perspective has to be exciting, because he came in to Indiana as a guy who didn't have a very specific role for that team last year, and kind of going into this year, it was still up in the air exactly what his role was going to be and kind of how effective he was going to be in that, with so many new additions. But to hear that from Coach Woodson, I think brought a lot of smiles to the faces of Indiana fans, just because of what he was able to provide before he did kind of have that injury middle part of last year.
Galloway's motor is going to be what gets him on the floor. There's no question. I think the key for him will be how has his jump shot progressed. Just his overall shot making has progressed. It was not heading into college. It was not a good looking shot. Through last year, it was still not a good looking shot, but it was better off the catch. Certainly better when he could have time and room to get it off. But he just plays so hard, and there was some improvement in his shot. So you can think there's some natural thoughts that it could naturally progress, because he's not like he wasn't going to put the work in, and that's something you value in a kid that, in every other way, was capable of being on the floor for what was a pretty. I mean, they've obviously had, as you referred to, they have a lot more options this year than they did last year. And he's going to have to be more efficient in shot making to get the minutes that he got last year. But, he's going to have the motor to do it and the work ethic to get that done, or at least to put himself in position. The Stewart thing's interesting because I like his size. I like his size. I've only seen video. You look at him, it looks like he's got decent length, looks like he's got some bulk to him, and with a pretty good athlete. At 6'5", with that length, if he's strong, he's going to be able to guard multiple positions. And that's the side of the ball that's the side of the ball that I think brought in any question about whether or not he would be able to help Indiana in the Big Ten, was just how good was he going to be defensively. The film on him defensively at Tennessee Martin was not good. But, how much of that it was just playing for, multiple coaches, how much of that was, just their team. They weren't a great team, and you transfer into a bigger situation, into a more competitive situation. It does tend to compel someone to change their habits. But I think offensively, he's pretty talented, and defensively, if he just becomes a willing defender, then he'll definitely be an asset. So, and versatile at his size. So.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing with him is he's never going to be a guy who is going to be leading you on the defensive end of the floor, but he just needs to be able to provide just that average defensive ability where you're not going to lose anything on that end of the floor with him, because I think what he's going to be able to provide offensively is something that obviously we'll see how he develops and how he kind of finds exactly what his role is going to be, but there's no question he can shoot the ball. There's no question he can score the ball. And that's something that I think Mike Woodson definitely wants out of that backcourt. You can see how much he's been putting into a lot of those guards, whether it be getting a Xavier Johnson or going out and signing Tamar Bates late. He knew there still was a lot to be desired out of that backcourt. And then the way that he was pushing Rob Finney this offseason as well, which I think is something that a lot of Indiana fans are excited to see and see what Rob Finney can actually be. I'm
the head of the bandwagon on him and have never really gotten off of it. And I mean, it was tough to watch him struggle with whatever he was struggling with, but definitely was struggling with production on the court. So it's great to hear that he seems to be bouncing back. And I know that was one of Dane's kind of behind the scenes pet projects was getting him back going, because his leadership and the ability to create shots for others will be huge. But yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Alec. But yeah, definitely, I'm excited for Rob if he can finish out strong at Indiana.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to be able to see. And I just kind of touching on that, but then also going back to the Parker Stewart thing, it's that role that he has is being able to shoot the ball. And if Rob Finney is able to get back that confidence level that he had back in high school. And even at times throughout his career, but just have a consistent level of that confidence. It's not only going to just make life a whole lot easier for anyone in that back, but also obviously anyone playing alongside him, which I think fans are still a little bit hesitant on, which obviously that's fair, just because he hasn't been able to kind of get going in the 3 years he's been there. But I think what you said with Dane Fife, and then also just with Mike Woodson is doing, is something that is really going to send Rob Finney over the edge here.
That's good stuff, Alec. Hey, we got to take a break right now. The Indiana Sports Talk heading to a break. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking
been nice if I remember the name of the show. What I call it, Indiana Sports Talk.
Yeah, that was funny.
That's the Friday and Saturday night show here in Indianapolis. Oh my! We need more words from John, the producer. He needed to give me more things to read.
Yeah, I'm hoping he can come back here, because I will have to jump here in a minute.
Yeah, no, I think he's getting set up, obviously. Yeah, his camera's working now. So,
Did you get a chance to listen much to Woodson from Friday?
I did not. No, I read some of the stuff that I was excited to see how Durr is, what he's bringing to the program, which is nothing else. It's just legitimate size for Trace and Race to battle against, and if he can be, I like the shot making aspect of it. If he could be, if he can provide any sort of offense, then obviously that goes without saying that's going to help Indiana. But I just don't think people really value the ability to play lineup flexibility. Is basically rotation flexibility is basically where I'm going with that. The ability to be big, the ability to be small, the ability to just have that flexibility to, match the team you're playing, or in some cases change the way they play. If they feel like Dirk could be an advantage to them offensively or on either end of the floor, then and help them dictate the style of play, then he needs to be out there.
Yep.
You hear me now?
Even if.
Yep.
Thank God. I can't hear myself now. Usually I can hear myself.
There's probably a setting for that.
I mean, honestly, I'd prefer not to hear myself, but ever since I've started doing this, I've been able to hear myself through my mic. I'd rather. I mean, honestly, I don't care if I fix that aspect of it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got about.
All right. I have to run. But
yeah, you're good. Go ahead, Alec. We appreciate it.
All right. Cool. Talk to you later.
Good talking, Alec.
All right. See you.
So what do you got, John? You've got clips from the.
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to comment on it or?
Yeah. Well, I'll introduce it.
Okay. That's cool.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio. No Jim Cool right now. John, the producer, here with Jim Reamer. You could still hear me, right, Jim?
Yep, absolutely.
See, this is weird. So before the break happened, I was moving my mic around, and something came unplugged. I got it rehooked back up, and the light's on, so I know it's definitely working. But we were saying in the break, I can't hear myself. I can hear you all, which is fine. But ever since I've been doing this with Jim, I've always been able to hear myself. The only other thing that I worry about is that I'm not coming through. It's fine. I'm talking production type stuff. We don't need to be talking about that right now, but hopefully it's something that I can
hear you through my headphones, that they can hear you on the air. If not, it ends up just being me. It ends up being me speaking every 30 seconds.
Yeah. So, but surely I can. I know I can rip the audio from StreamYard as long as I'm coming through on StreamYard, which I'm pretty sure you said it's working. Hopefully the audience can hear it as well. But we're here. We're going to go ahead and jump into a little bit of some of the clips from Mike Woodson's press conference from the other day. He was previewing the Bahamas trip, talking about some of the early practices they've been able to do. So let's just go ahead and start with his opening statement, and then we'll talk a little bit about each of these clips and just kind of see where Indiana basketball is at right now.
We just been working, the last month and a half to prepare, for this Bahama trip. It's been a lot of input both ways with the players and coaching staff, and they, from where we started to where we are today, we've gotten a lot better, especially from a conditioning standpoint. And I know it's early, but I just wanted them to get a feel of who I am as a coach in terms of my conditioning side of the basketball. I mean, we got to be in better shape, I think, than we were last season. So that's why I'm really pushing the conditioning, because of the way we want to play on both ends of the floor. We really got to be conditioned to move around and run up and down the floor. So in that regard, I think we're starting to improve there, and they're starting to pick up some of the things that I've added from an offensive standpoint and a defensive standpoint. And it's kind of nice to see, but we still got a long way to go right now.
So, Jim, you heard him talk a lot about conditioning and getting up to speed on that front. And I know you being are you an AAU coach? Is that what it is you do?
Yeah, I've done that for 30 years. Yeah, I've did school ball for 10, did both concurrently for 10 years, but yeah, I've done the AAU side of it for 30.
And I'm sure college basketball, especially when you're adjusting to a new coach and you're doing something like going down to the Bahamas, you're going to be playing a professional team in BC Mega. If you're not conditioned, you're going to get ran out of that gym. I know it's just an exhibition, but that seems like a pretty important thing to be focused on in the early going in these practices.
Well, this time of year, especially, most teams are focusing on conditioning and skill work, and I heard Alec come in as I logged on. Alec was talking about the benefit of having the 10 extra practices. There's no question that that's a benefit, especially it's a big benefit in two situations, especially one, if you've got a lot of new guys coming on board, which says Indiana. and also if you have a new coaching staff, which is also Indiana. So there's two big reasons why these 10 practices are going to be big. And the conditioning side of it, look, I thought last year, especially Trace Jackson Davis and Race Thompson, I thought both, with as relied upon as they were, both wore down late in games. And it's some of that, and a lot of that is not their fault. A lot of that is just like injuries to Brunk or an injury to Joey Brunk and not having any other options besides those two. Indiana's got more options this year to alleviate some of that. Hearing good things about Michael Durr kind of get me excited about what he might be able to bring, even if it's just, a dozen minutes a game and being a big body to push Trace around in practice and a big body for Trace to have to score over in practices. I'm sure he's going to be able to provide more than that, but I've just not seen him play. So, but it was nice to hear how good he's been looking. But I don't expect Indiana to look good.
And I don't think anybody should. I think that's the biggest danger that fans could put themselves in right now. And I think that's the biggest reason why they're not showing any of this on TV or doing it over radio. Because you don't want to see people on Twitter or whatever it may be, Facebook, commenting about how bad this team looks. Because you shouldn't be expecting them to look good, I don't think.
No, I think they're gonna look choppy. I think if they get opportunities to turn defense into offense, look, it's not going to be a whole lot different than what Team USA looked like in the first 2 or 3 games, in the Olympics. It looked disjointed. It looked at times because they were guessing as to what they were supposed to be doing on the offensive end, especially. It looked disinterested. A lot of guys standing. Look, on the basketball court, when you're not sure of what you're doing, a vast majority of players will just stop. And try to let something else happen to them. You do want guys to do more things like cut or screen, especially obviously on the offensive end. But a lot of times they just stop and shut down. They get a little bit overwhelmed on what they're supposed to be doing, and it looks like these guys are just standing around. And the reality that's not the case. Is they're just confused as all get out. And I fully expect them to be disjointed down there. I fully expect them, to be able to do well in spurts, and hopefully, if they're doing well, it's because they're turning defense into offense, and that's the kind of thing you like to see from a coach that's talking a lot about being a little bit more up tempo and a little bit more aggressive on defense.
Another thing that was interesting, back to the press conference stuff, a lot of people are wanting to know what the first starting lineup might look like. And Woodson kind of answered that question during his press conference. We'll go through that. It's a little 20-second snippet right here.
Competition in practice has been pretty competitive, and in order to be a great team, you got to have competition, man, and guys competing against one another. No starting position is set in stone, except for the big fella Trey. So everybody's just working right now, trying to figure it out.
So there you go. Obviously everyone expects Trace Jackson Davis to be on the starting lineup game 1, but it is interesting that he was willing to come out and say that regardless, Trace Jackson is the only guy that's set in stone in the starting lineup.
Well, that takes me back to what I said about Michael Durr. That tells me maybe there's some development there that what if he starts at center? What if he gets a good number of minutes at the center spot, allowing Trace to play away from the basket a little bit more. I think that's that's clearly a welcome development. And I believe the bench is a great motivator. So these guys want to play. They're going to have to produce. They're going to have to be coachable. They're going to have to be competitive. And I love the competitive aspect of practices. And I like that guys have to earn playing time and that nothing is promised. But look, we know Trace is a hard worker too. So this isn't something that isn't going to be earned regardless of how it's framed. You say things like that as a coach with the baseline of knowing if your best player is among your hardest workers, you can get away with I don't know if the word anoint is the right word, but nobody has questioned his work ethic since his junior year of high school, when he was expected to be the guy to carry Center Grove. And from that point on, the lights have been on in his head, and he has just continued to work. And so I don't know I would expect Xavier. I would expect Xavier Johnson to start, I would expect.
Yeah, you would think him, and then apparently Rob Fennessy's been improving in practice. I don't know that he'll start, but I don't think we'll see his minutes die down necessarily. No. And then a lot of people think Tamar Bates, kind of the top of Indiana's two-man class, unless you include the transfers.
I see him, and I see those two, and perhaps Stewart.
I think Miller Kopp will be in there for sure.
I'll be curious about that one. I think he's going to have to really show that he's tougher than what he's coming in to do, and I'm curious to see what he is defensively. No different than what I said to Alec, about Stewart. Be curious to see what Kopp is defensively, if he can play that 3 spot. I'm not sure of that yet. Some of that is whispers going around, but then that's also been not all that recent talk either. So that's been sort of early July where, look, he's got to figure out this. As Northwestern's had some good years, but this is Indiana expected to be toward the top of the Big Ten, or at least the top third of the Big Ten, whether by reputation or just by sheer will of what Mike Woodson and Dane Fife expect this program to be. If Kopp is going to help this team, he's going to have to play to that level of expectation and not to the level of expectation of what others see Indiana as coming into this year. So, if Kopp can play the 3 and be that shooter that they needed, that they've needed so desperately the last 2 years, super. I think Parker Stewart can be that kid too. And from there, who knows? Maybe Galloway sneaks in there because he just brings so many other things to the table. Would definitely not mind seeing him be a guy that scratches into that rotation. So.
Yeah, one thing I disagree with Jim Coyle on is his stance on Trey Galloway. He seems to think that he's obsolete at this point. Trey Galloway reminds me a lot of Troy Williams in a sense that he's kind of all over the floor. He's not as productive as Troy Williams is yet, but if Mike Woodson can get him developed better, he was only a freshman last year. Right. If Mike Woodson can get him developed the way that he needs to be, I think he can be a very athletic and efficient presence on the floor.
No, I agree. I agree because there's just a lot of good things he does on the court. I mean, he was a primary ball handler in high school, not necessarily because he had to be, but just because he was good at it. And it was definitely a combination of both those. His shot is the one question mark. That's it. And
it seems like that's the question mark with a lot of Indiana players, honestly.
It is, but his especially. I mean, he is just. It's got chances off the catch, off the dribble. He's got to get into the paint and be more of a floater guy right now than a pull up guy. And I don't know. Look, none of us have seen these guys play since March, and maybe even it's the first week of March. So maybe it's one of those deals too where there's just been a lot of development. But I don't question Galloway's ability to be part of this program going forward. I mean, to me, he has everything else going for him except a shot, and that's simply coming from me, who hasn't seen him play since March. So we'll see.
Nothing should be off the table when you have a brand new coach, with a brand new perspective.
And defensively, he's going to be a plus defender. He's going to be a guy that can guard multiple positions. He's going to be a guy that can get, if he gets caught in a switch, regardless of who he gets caught on, is not going to hurt you. You're not going to maybe throw him out there against the quickest of point guards. You're definitely not going to throw him out there on a center, or on a legitimate Big Ten center. But if he gets caught up in ball screen action on a switch, he's not going to hurt them at all. In fact, I think he's an asset in that regard because of how hard he works and how he's willing to throw his body around.
All right, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this Woodson press conference. We've got some more clips to go through, and we'll discuss and continue this stuff as Indiana gets ready to head off to the Bahamas. We'll be right back right after this. You can still hear me. I always have to make audio adjustments whenever I'm going into break. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. What I don't hear is that transition.
Do you hear the commercials? Did you hear the commercials, period?
No, did not.
I feel like when
normally we have
I'm,
like a 10 to 15-second window where we hear the commercials where we're not supposed to speak.
Yeah,
because that means we're still on the
that's
air.
That's probably why you couldn't hear it coming back earlier. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
they're definitely playing on here. So what this will affect is just the way that I have to edit it down, is because StreamYard thankfully records the audio as well, in terms of like I can download the audio separately.
Yeah, that's what Zoom does.
And
we podcast with Zoom, and
there you go. Yeah,
the audio is separate.
But what with the Spreaker, which is what I also have up here, and it's how I check levels and everything. Which nothing other than the commercials is really coming through. I didn't even look at your stuff. But anyway, I don't know if it's even recording stuff anymore. There may be just a whole hour's worth of a blank podcast. So this goes directly to our Spreaker account, which I don't know, may not. Whoever's listening on Spreaker, if you normally listen on Spreaker, which honestly is probably not very many of you since you're listening on YouTube, you may hear a bit of a funky end of the show today. Unintended, but we'll get that fixed before tomorrow, obviously.
Yeah, I've got people that comment about hearing us through watching it on YouTube. Maybe not watching it, but a background.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I'm curious how. I feel like some people, especially the people who are retired and listen, I'm sure they pull it up on their TV, have it playing in the background while they're doing stuff and whatnot. I don't know. It's just cool to think about.
A lot of options, yeah, no doubt. We use Zoom to record our podcasts, and it does provide a separate audio track, which is. And then I've got our base podcast set up. All I do is throw the audio on there. I don't even edit it anymore.
Yeah. See, me and Dustin start our football podcast tonight.
Oh, do you? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that, and then I'm hoping, because right now I'm real stressed about it, because I want to make sure I've got everything ordered the way it needs to be, and like editing and all that stuff. I'm hoping it becomes seamless after a few episodes, but we'll see.
And we do nothing with the video, so we don't do anything with that. And so far everything has gone well. Just link it through Spotify and Apple, and
I'm gonna try to bring us back in and see if you can hear it.
Okay.
You can hear that at all? Mm-mm. You may not even be able to hear the music I play when I come back, but we'll see.
Mm-mm.
You hear that? No. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. John, the producer, taking over here as we wrap up the show with Jim Reamer. Jim Reamer cannot hear the audio that you can hear right now, which is kind of fun. Or maybe you all can't either. Who knows? This has been an interesting little way to wrap up the show, but we're still talking. We're still talking Mike Woodson and Indiana basketball as they get ready to head to the Bahamas here. Jim said he thinks they leave today. Jim Coyle said that earlier. I'm pretty sure they're supposed to arrive tomorrow, so that wouldn't surprise me if they are taking off today. But we were talking earlier. You were saying earlier that defense, specifically the Miller Cop, needs to improve. So we're going to go out and play a clip from Woodson speaking about what they've worked on in practice in regards to their defense.
They're picking them up. My thing is I think when you put a defensive concept in place, you give them the general stuff, but there's always what we call the what ifs. You're going to have the what ifs a lot when you're playing basketball, maybe on offense or defense, and mainly defense. I can say we're going to play this pick and roll a certain way, but what if it doesn't happen that way? Are you going to just quit and say, well, it didn't work and we give up and succumb to a bucket? No, you got to play the what ifs too. So those are the things that I'm trying to teach, as we go along in our pick and roll coverage, our post up game. When there's a breakdown, somebody beating somebody on a baseline drive, do you just watch and let him come in and lay it up? No, you gotta go and stop the problem. And then you, after you stop the problem, you got to scramble out of the problem and get to to where the ball might take you. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that has to be taught that we as a staff, we've got a lot of stuff in this short period of time. And that's why I'm very encouraged in that they picking things up and are getting better from the time we started and where we are today.
Since you brought up ball screens, look, there's probably 7 or 8 legitimate ways to guard ball screen action. And, you really have to pick 2. You can't run the gambit of doing all of them or working on all of them. You've got to be able to be really good at a couple of them. And then that none of that includes just flat out switching. That's its own entity. That's definitely its own entity unto itself. But what he's talking about too is one thing I like to do if somebody comes up and says, "Hey, why don't you try doing this?" They pull out my little dry erase board and they show me things like in between games, and they always forget the other team is allowed to move, and that's the what if game that he's talking about. The other team is allowed to do things to counteract the things that you do. And he's also talking about, when he talks about scrambling, he's basically talking about fractions. What happens when you've got negative fractions, which means they've got more guys than you. So anytime you put a situation, let's say you're going to double a ball screen, well, once the ball gets moved, the other team has the advantage. If you've got 2 guys guarding the ball and the ball finds its way out, all of a sudden they've got 4 on 3. And so that's the kind of stuff that he's talking about. What happens in those situations when we're rotating, when we're helping? Even helping is a situation where you're putting 2 guys to the ball. And now the next play means it's 4 on 3. So how are they scrambling out of that? How do they handle negative fractions with hustle, with intelligence, with discipline? Those 3 things is going to define how any team plays. That's, look, he's going to have coming from where he has come from and watching remembering what some of the Knicks teams were like when he played. They're going to put a lot of pressure on the ball. There's no question. Now, how they guard behind the ball remains to be seen. There's a lot of different ways to handle that. I know the system under which he played, which was night, which was helpline defense, which was, certain rules based on where the ball was. But it was also rules that were based upon the notion that the more athletic you were as a player, the further away from the ball you could be, which means the closer to your man you can be. And, there were some teams that Indiana had under night where they could smother the heck out of people. And then there were teams where, they had to definitely be a lot more ball oriented because they weren't going to be able to contain the dribble as much. That's where you hear good things about how Fennessy's playing. The more Fennessy can be productive on offense, the more of an asset he's going to be because he's such a good defender. You hear things like that and you get excited.
So the fact that they had to implement all these different things, and you're talking about athleticism and all of that stuff, Archie did this pack line defense, which some people, I remember on Mike Woodson, one of his first press conferences, he said he didn't even know what a pack line defense was. Yeah. Is it just lazy? I understand that you're going underneath the basket and all that kind of stuff. You're trying to be big. That's kind of what I get out of it. But
no, what you're doing with pack line is you're trying to create as much attention to the ball as possible. You are pressuring the ball, but you're also stacking the driving gap with players. And it's when you don't have Virginia plays it looks really good doing it because they had size in the backcourt. When you don't have size in the backcourt, sometimes you can't rely on long athletic closeouts, and that's the thing where but what the pack line does is it stacks the driving gap, meaning the path between the ball and the rim. So you've got guys that are there. It's geared toward keeping the ball around like an outer shell of the offense. Mm-hmm. But again, teams have learned to manipulate that and flare that in and pin that in and make it difficult for them to get around screens, make it difficult for them to guard back action, which is if I'm coming off the ball screen, somebody's filling in behind me. Mm-hmm. It may be the screener, but if the screener rolls and does a rim run, I'm doing all these hand gestures like people can see me. Well, maybe YouTube people can see me. As the screener rim runs, somebody lifts behind the ball, and now he becomes the back action. And that has been a very effective way to counteract teams that really tag roll men aggressively or really stack the deck against the driving gap, is to beat things with back action, with diversionary tactics, and putting guys in a position where you're forcing then long closeouts. Well, long closeouts are great when you've got the athletes to do it and you've got the length to do it. Indiana hasn't had that luxury lately, so they're going to have to do things a little bit of a different way. But I think there's some times where pack line maybe gets questioned because they think people are just in there standing around. But to me, it's basically trying to create as early help as possible, which then helps them on closeouts. Instead of helping and recovering, you're already in help position. Now all you have to do is force the pass and then recover. That's as best as I can do it. That's as best as I can talk on the fly about pack line. But
it's looking like Jim is back from being at Indiana football practice, so I'm going to hand it back over to him.
Is it raining?
Oh, yes, it is definitely raining.
It's starting to rain up here, which is north side of Indianapolis, so it's not like
it's kind of funny.
system.
We were looking at the radar. I was like, it looks like it's going to hit right at 10:45. It's like exactly when it hit, but that's the time we get kicked out of practice anyway. So it worked out perfectly, but didn't get to see a lot from the offense. They were inside most of the time. Michael Penix, I kind of assumed, I think I said that before, I'd be shocked if it was raining if they had him outside, which was the case. But just going through all the drills and it's early season. But
is he going to be ready for the start of the season?
Absolutely. He's ready right now. He's the number one quarterback. Cool. I will say this. It's my first look at Donovan McCulley.
Yeah.
And on this stage.
He was a sneaky good basketball player for Lawrence North.
He's just a good athlete. You can tell. But you look at him, I'm like, oh, man, this dude is about a year away from being a good college quarterback. I'm like, wow. He's got the tools. He's got the size. He talking to Kevin Brockway, he's got speed. When Kevin saw him play once, he had a 60-yard touchdown run. And, man, if you have a quarterback that can throw, like I saw him make some downfield throws here today. He was making some pocket throws, some precision throws. I'm not jumping over Jack Tuttle, but it's my first time seeing Donovan, and he just looked a little more acclimated than I expected. He's definitely number 3 on the depth chart.
A guy like that, you wonder just what type of reads he'll make in a passing situation. And when you watch the way he plays basketball, how intelligent he is on the court, how he's able to adjust and get guys, in his case, get guys open. I mean, his job, they ran nothing for him at Lawrence North. They had 3 Division I basketball players, one of whom obviously C.J. Gunn is committed to Indiana. He was not part of their offensive game plan other than secondary, drop-offs and offensive rebounding. And his primary job was get guys open. And he did it with enthusiasm. He was a great role player for them, and he had some double doubles for them, and he had some really good opportunities where he bailed them out, and he had darn near almost helped them get over the top against Homestead during their regular season game.
Well, that's great. That's a great mental exercise for a quarterback to be thinking like that all the time. Your options.
Yep.
And basketball, sometimes it comes a little quicker. But he just looked good out there. I was impressed.
Yeah, the basketball, it's always everything happens in front of you, especially when you're off the ball. But football, he's going to have guys chasing him.
Oh yeah, trying to tear your head off.
Different story. Yeah, that's the thing. I think his instincts. You just watch him play. He was a fluid player on the court, even though he's not part of what they were doing offensively. I loved watching him work. Don't know much anything about his football ability, but if he's good size, definitely for sure. If he's got the arm and he's able to make reads in a passing game or passing situation, then he's got a chance to be pretty good.
Yeah, Michael Penix is healthy, ready to go, wearing a brace on his right knee. But when we were at Big Ten Media Days, I noticed how much stronger his upper body looked. He just had this V cut. I'm like, daggone. You can just tell he has really put on the muscle. Hopefully that helps him with that. But yeah, he's wearing the red jersey. He's not going to get touched until September. The first time he gets touched is going to be September 4th. That I guarantee you. When they open up at Iowa. Even Ty Freifeld was wearing the blue jersey today. So they're trying to protect their guys. I mentioned earlier that even the training camp is more of an NFL style training camp that Delon McCullough brought over, which is a little less hitting in the beginning to let those muscles get a little more acclimated into it, because they've got studies where they show the trauma from soft tissue injuries over the first 4 or 5 days or such. And so he's brought a lot of information and things over from the NFL. They're not just from coaching, but that are going to benefit this program.
Any more clips, John?
Oh, yeah, we can go back to Mike Woodson if you want, Jim.
Absolutely. Let's hear what Mikey had to say. I didn't mean to interrupt your guys. I just saw I had time left, so I'm like, oh, well, you know what? I'll jump back on with those guys. But have right at it, man.
Yeah, we've got about 5 more minutes. We can probably go through one more clip. We'll go to one. He's talking about Rob Finney's improvement and BC Mega at the Bahamas.
Well, this is important because
go ahead.
Rob Finney has been a lot, Jim, questions about what's his role going to be this year. Is he going to be able to withstand these new guys coming in, the new? You've got an entire new staff that they weren't the guys that brought him in. So Rob's going to have to earn his place. And just like everybody else, just like Tamar Bates is or anybody else, he's going to have to earn his spot. So it's curious to hear the comments from Mike on Rob.
Well, I think Rob has improved. His confidence is a little bit better, I think, than it was last year. And I'm just trying to get Rob and Xavier, young Christian, to learn how to be point guards and run your team, when they got the ball in their hand. And I think Rob has stood out a little bit in terms of where he was a year ago, in terms of being more relaxed and comfortable and playing. And, I'm going to need him to stay there because and continue to grow, because, that position is important, because a lot of times the ball will be in his hands and Xavier's hands as well. And you need them to be able to make the right decisions when the ball is in their hands. With the Mega team, we are watching film on them. They're a big team. They're a team that plays well together. They got a pretty good little point guard that kind of directs traffic. So we really going to have to control him and put heat on him when he's got the ball in his hand. But they got a lot of shooters, a lot of big guys. They play 4-round one as well. And so it'll be a test for our ball club to see how we compete and see how we can play at a high level. I mean, that's kind of what I'm anxious to get to the Bahamas to see where we are as a team.
Yeah,
and anxious to get out of this cold weather too.
Finney is always been at his best when he's downhill, and he was a tremendous finisher in high school, both at the rim and mid paint shots. Obviously, at the college level, he's not going to get to the rim as successfully. But then what he's able to do is when he's in the teeth of the defense, he's able to kick out and find people. And when he was aggressive last year, which wasn't much, but when he was aggressive last year, Indiana was playing some really good basketball. And I think that's something that hopefully they can bottle. I know, Jim, you had some questions about what his role would be. I think from the very beginning, they felt that they needed him to be at least part of the rotation. Obviously, you can't replace experience. They believe in his strengths. I know that he was going to be a pet project of Coach Fife. When Dane came on board, he was definitely going to be in Rob's ear, making sure Rob understands how valuable he can be, because there's a toughness to his game that has been missing, and none of us really know why. And it'll be nice if he gets that back, because I think he's got the kind of leadership and unselfish mentality it takes to be a point guard in the Big Ten that's going to have options this year. Indiana's going to have some offensive options, and he's going to be the one guy that can really help find it and unlock some of it, I think, with his ability to create opportunities for others.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. You want to see him go out with a nice finish. Over the last couple of years, he hasn't really had players to practice against to really push his game. I mean, that's a big part of it to me. You've got to be pushed. And you look on that roster and like, who the hell's pushing him in practice? Who could possibly push him? So now there are guys that can go back and forth, and that's part of what it takes to get better, in addition to the tutelage. But you've got to have people that push you. And he definitely has that, and hopefully he can benefit from that this year and be one of the leaders on that team, because that's another thing they need are leaders. I don't know how much of that was there last year. You had people that kind of wanted to be, but I don't know if they were truly leaders yet. I don't know if they knew how to be.
Well, sometimes that comes from the staff too. Sometimes a coaching staff can talk about how they want leadership on the court, but then they can undercut it. And I'm not saying that's something that's done intentionally. That was done intentionally, but I think sometimes Miller can really would be a guy that can micromanage things, and everything seemed to have to run through Miller during game action. And I don't know that that's a great way to do it. I don't know if that's a great way to play.
I agree. Jim, what do you got coming up, man?
Rest and relaxation. That's it. We are heading into the fall, and looking forward. I was talking to Alec during the 10 to 10:30 segment about looking forward to getting out and getting back into college practices. So when those guys get going for real in September, I'm going to be out hopefully getting down to Indiana as well, because it's not been available. It wasn't available under Miller.
It'd be very interesting to see if they ever open that up to the media as well.
Well, it'll be one of those deals. I was telling Alec, it'll be one of those deals. I know John's trying to get us to wrap up here, but I go in from a different perspective. I don't go in as media as much as I'm here with you. And it'll be one of those things where we might be able to talk about things off the air that I would never. I'm looking for different ways to teach things, basically.
Absolutely, it's coaching deal.
And I'll be heading over to Eastern Illinois to watch Marty Simmons run practice. I'll be Butler a lot, and I'll figure out some way to take a trip where I'm seeing 2 or 3 colleges that I haven't been to, and that typically is, for me, that's vacation. But that's typically how I travel in the fall. So,
well, a big thanks to Jim Reamer, big thanks to Alec Lasley, and of course John, the producer. But most importantly, big thanks to you guys. Without you all, we no reason for us to be here. We will be back here doing it again tomorrow. Luckily, we can be in the studio all day. We are not at practice, so I don't have to worry about that. But enjoy your day. Stay out of the rain, because wherever you are, I think it's coming to you. It's headed your way. But Jim, I hope you have a great day, great rest of your week, man.
Thanks.
And John, the producer, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
As well as you guys. I appreciate it. Hopefully see you all tomorrow as well. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.